The 2025 NFL Draft is just a couple of days away. So in today's video, I want to give you guys my top 10 edge rushers of the 2025 NFL Draft. Subscribe and like the video if you guys enjoy it. Let's hop into it. Now, before we get into this top 10, I do just want to say there are a number of players that I did consider for this list because it's a pretty deep edge rushing class. So if I did not get your guy on the list, let me know in the comment section below and I'll make sure to give you guys my explanation as to why they're not in my top 10. So we are going to begin at number 10 with Landon Jackson, the edge from Arkansas. I like to think of Landon Jackson as somebody who is a very safe prospect. Like, I have a good feeling that he's going to end up being a really solid pro at the NFL level. For me, it all just comes down to what is his true upside. Does he have that potential to be a go-to pass rusher for a team? And I just don't really see that with Landon Jackson. I see more of like a really good rotational edge rusher who gets a lot of snaps and can get some decent productivity. In terms of some pros to the game of Landon Jackson, he's very long, lengthy, he's a very strong player, very fundamentally sound, and for the most part, you know what you're going to get out of Landon Jackson. Now, he's not really a speedster, he's definitely not a fast guy, he's also has some injuries in his past. I think his first step and general bend around the corner could use a little bit of some improvement, but again, what you're getting at Landon Jackson is a very fundamentally sound player who you know basically exactly what you're going to get. His size, his length, his strength gives him a very high floor. Just kind of comes down to I don't think he'll ever end up being like a true go-to pass rusher for a team. And so if you aren't really a high upside guy who has the potential to be a high-level pass rusher, I don't really see how that makes you a first-round caliber guy. I think he's more than likely going to go somewhere on day 2, more than likely in round 2, maybe round 3. I think if you're a team that maybe has some good pass rushers but needs some size to your defensive line, I think Landon Jackson will make a lot of sense. In terms of what teams I think would be a good fit for the Arkansas product, then I think there'd be a number of teams. I look at a team like the Dallas Cowboys who can definitely use some size in their edge rushing room. Obviously, teams like Carolina, the Saints who typically like to go with bigger, fundamentally sound edge rushers. All those teams make sense. I think basically every single team would love to have a long, lengthy edge rusher with a very high floor and a relatively, good size ceiling. That's kind of what I see with Landon Jackson. But let's go ahead and move on to number 9. I have JT Tuimoloau, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced his name throughout this video, but I'm just going to call him JT. And kind of for the same reasons I like JT are also very similar reasons as to why I like Landon Jackson. He's well-sized, except JT has a little bit more productivity. He had a lot of sacks this year. And again, he's somebody who has a very high floor, but a moderate to level, ceiling. Last year at 15 sacks, I don't think he'll be a 15 sack a season type guy. He'll definitely be somebody who probably sticks to maybe around 8 to 7 a year, maybe a little bit less than that. But what I like about JT Tuimoloau is just I think he's going to be really solid against the run. For his pros, I said that he has a very high floor, really good against the run. And I think as a pass rusher, there is something there to his game. It's not like he is exclusively just going to be a run stuffer. I think this is a perfect body to put next to somebody like a Trey Hendrickson or like a Micah Parsons or a TJ Watt, a Myles Garrett. Like if your team has that go-to pass rusher, somebody who can get you 10 plus sacks a season, JT would be like the perfect player to put next to him because he can also rush the quarterback, but is dominant against the run. So it kind of puts the offense in a bit of a pickle. For JT, I just think he's a very safe prospect. Again, kind of similar to Landon. I don't think he'll go round 1 just because I don't think he has the upside to be a really dominant pass rusher. But if you tell me that he goes on day 2, somewhere within rounds 2 to round 3, I think that's incredible value for somebody who I think will be a part of your roster for the foreseeable future and be a high impact player. Again, just to reiterate, I don't think he'll ever be a high level pass rusher. I think at most he'll probably get around 8 to 7 to 6 sacks a season. It just comes down to the fact that I'm fine with his maybe limited productivity ability in the pass rushing department because of how good I think he can be against the run and just how solid of a player he is. Not to mention, I've heard some really good things about his personality, so that also does kind of play into this as well. Again, he had 15 sacks last year. I don't think that it was a fluke by no means, but I also don't think he's going to get you close to 15 in the NFL. Again, 8 to 7, something along those lines. But let's move on to number 8 is going to be James Pierce Jr. Now, there might be some people who think I'm really low on James Pierce Jr., but I want to be completely honest and open to you guys. I like James Pierce Jr. It's just that I happen to like these other prospects a bit more. If James does go in the first round, I have no issue with it because I can definitely see why you would want him. Just for me, I prefer some other skill sets that maybe James Pierce doesn't quite have compared to some of the other prospects. In terms of what James Pierce Jr. is, he is a high ceiling but relatively low floor player. Like, this is somebody who can be excellent at the NFL level, get you 10 plus sacks a season, or he could be somebody that maybe is out of the league within 6-7 years. I think the best way to talk about James Pierce Jr. is by beginning with his overall athleticism. This dude is an athletic freak. He is a little bit lighter, but what he does like in sort of being a lighter player, he makes up for it with his twitchiness, his ability to get your hands off of him, and just overall, he has the elite productivity in the SEC that you want to see come to the NFL. Now, admittedly speaking, James Pierce might be a player who we're just overthinking and just needs to accept the fact that he is an elite prospect who has great productivity and a good skill set to translate. But for me, I guess I'm just a little bit more nitpicky of some of his issues. For starters, for somebody who is as light as him, I would like to see maybe a bit more flexibility. Like, he doesn't have elite bend around the corner, especially when he's playing in certain alignments. Like, I look at James Pierce Jr. and I don't think he would fit within a 4-3 system. I think he almost exclusively has to play like on the outside, like an outside linebacker like role, or an edge with a lot of space between him and the tackle. Just because of his hands in the dirt and he's one-on-one with the tackle, I kind of think the tackle is going to win most of the time unless James Pierce Jr. can beat him around the edge. I also just think the deeper understanding of the pass rush, like how to get certain moves, just don't think that James Pierce Jr. has them quite down, which if he wants to succeed at the NFL level, he's going to need more than just pure athleticism to get past some of these elite tackles. Now, I think James Pierce Jr. is going to be a fun player who I could see games where James Pierce Jr. just takes over, where if he's going up against a slow-footed tackle who maybe isn't the best, like I could see James Pierce going for 2+ sacks on that guy. But the second he goes up against a Laramie Tunsil or a quick-footed tackle that can match his athleticism, I think he's going to struggle mightily. So for me, that kind of does limit his upside, in all honesty. I think at worst, we're talking about a situational pass rusher, but at best, we're talking about a legit all-pro level guy. So it kind of makes it a really fun case to talk about here with him, and I think the next couple players are also kind of like that. Just kind of happens to be that I prefer their skill set over James Pierce Jr. So again, I think he is caliber of a first-round pick. I wouldn't personally take him in round 1, but if he does go round 1, I have no issue with it. We're going to move on to number 7, Mykel Williams, and a lot of what I said about James Pierce in terms of his value, I also kind of think goes in line with Mykel. I do not have a round 1 grade on Mykel Williams, nor do I with anybody I've talked about in this list, but if he does go round 1, I don't really have a big issue with it. And my reasoning for that is just because a lot of these players are really good. It just happens to be that there's some really good players around them that I think are maybe a little bit better. For Mykel, some of his pros, he's got elite size with long arms, well-sized hands. He's also only 20 years of age, so there's still a lot of room to grow. And kind of like the 9th and 10th player on this list, I think his ceiling is relatively safe, but his floor is also really good as well. In terms of who I think Mykel Williams will be, I think he's going to be an elite level run defender at the NFL level. He has the pure size and hand length and arm length and all that stuff to really make me feel confident that he can be great against the run. It just kind of comes down to what level of a pass rusher are we going to get from Mykel. Now, he did play with an injury last year, so in some ways, maybe that did limit him as a pass rusher, but I never really felt like he was a true dominant pass rusher out there. Like, he could be a disruptor at times, but I never felt like he was ever a serious threat to the quarterback very consistently. Again, I think he has the athletic profile, the size profile, and everything you want. I just don't know if he has that true ceiling to be a great pass rusher. So again, kind of like JT and Landon, I see him being somebody who gets taken somewhere in the late 1st or early 2nd, who I think has a great ceiling to be a awesome run defender and maybe a solid pass rusher at the NFL level. And again, if you're in a situation where you're next to an elite edge rusher 1, then that's totally fine if Mykel Williams is your second option. Because again, hypothetically speaking, we'll just say Trey Hendrickson because the Bengals desperately need an edge number 2. If you were to pair Mykel with Trey Hendrickson, Hendrickson would be your 10+ a sack season guy, whereas Mykel can get you 6, 7, 8 sacks and just be really stout against the run. And you will take that 9 times out of 10 because that makes your defensive line just significantly better. I'd rather have somebody great against the run and could get you 5+ sacks a season, more so than somebody who's okay against the run and gets you 3 sacks a season. Like, I just truly think that Mykel could be that like next evolution of that sort of player. So for Mykel, kind of like with James Pierce, I would not personally take him in the 1st round, but if you say 2nd round, I feel great about it. But if he does go in the 1st round, I don't have a huge issue with it. We're going to move on to number 6 is going to be Shamar Stewart. Now, Shamar Stewart, in every way that I talked about him being somebody with a high ceiling and a low floor as James Pierce, like Shamar Stewart is the embodiment of high ceiling and low floor. The ceiling for Shamar Stewart is truly generational talent. The floor for Shamar Stewart is never really cracks the rotation and kind of is just a bench player. And that is because he has all the tools necessary to get the job done. Great size, good athlete, can be a disruptor on tape very often. But my God, he has no productivity to him. Because yes, he could be a disruptor, but my God, he can never turn a disruption or a good pass rush into an actual sack or into an actual statistic. Like, he is consistently around the ball, but not making the play, which is sort of an issue that I want to see fixed come to the NFL. I think Shemar Stewart needs development. Not he should get development. He needs development. I don't know if he should really start or be in the starting role within his first year. I think he needs to sit for at least a year. Obviously get playing time, of course, but not be a true starter in year one unless he just breaks out randomly. But I think you need to put him with a great defensive line coach that's going to be patient with him, that gives him a year or two to really understand the nuance of the game and actually how to get sacks and how to, turn a disruption into a sack or into a tackle for a loss or into a big play, because right now he just doesn't do so. Like last year, I don't even think he had 2 sacks, so that's a huge issue for an edge rusher. But again, what you look at him is a moldable piece of clay where you say, okay, I get this guy who is a freak athlete, who has everything that you want in an edge rusher. He just needs to learn how to be a better edge rusher, how to have a more technically sound skill set. And I think if you can get that out of Shemar Stewart, then you're going to get a fantastic player. Again, I don't really think he should go early round 1, but I do have like a very late first round grade. I'd feel more comfortable taking Shemar Stewart after like picks 20, 21, 22. Like if you take him with the 25th pick, don't have a huge issue with it because I can definitely see the ceiling for Shemar Stewart. Moving on to number 5, I have Donovan Ezaraku. Now, I think Donovan Ezaraku is a unique prospect because I think he is kind of similar to some of these other players like James Pierce. I think he's kind of scheme dependent. I don't think he's going to fit a 4-3 defense. I just don't think it's a good fit. But if you put him in a 3-4 outside linebacker role, I think he'll definitely succeed at a pretty elite level. In terms of some pros for Donovan Ezaraku, I said he's a very fast player, very twitched up player. He's a smooth pass rusher. Like for somebody who maybe isn't the biggest in size, he's very smooth, can get around the corner really nicely, and just has a really nice smooth skill set to him. And I also said his last pro, kind of going back to what I said, he has really solid bend around the corner. Now, again, he is a bit of a smaller player with not maybe the greatest measurables and isn't the greatest athlete. But I think at times what you can just see in Donovan Ezaraku is a player who is just a legit baller. Sometimes we like to project and project and project when sometimes we just need to watch the film and say, yeah, that's translatable to the NFL. And I think for Donovan, I see somebody who is translatable to the NFL. Do I have a first round grade on Donovan? I do. I would be very comfortable taking him in the 20s to early 30s. I would feel a little bit less comfortable taking him top 15 just because I don't think he's worthy of that pick. But again, sort of a weaker draft class. So if he were to go early in the first round, I would call it a reach, but I wouldn't like absolutely hate the pick. Obviously, if it was a top 10 pick, I probably wouldn't like the pick. I'd prefer some other players, but I guess I can sort of see it. Again, going back to what I said, very scheme-dependent player. I don't think you could put his hand in the dirt. I also don't think he has much versatility. I think he needs to primarily play off the edge with a 2-point stance, maybe occasionally a 3-point stance, but I just really see somebody who needs to play off the edge, give him some space to operate. He's got good fundamentals. I think he's a little bit more nuanced than some of these other players. He also has elite productivity, which, again, just kind of think sometimes what you need to do is just watch the player play. Now, I don't think he'll ever necessarily be great against the run, but I do see him being somebody who can get you 8+ sacks a season, obviously in his prime, if everything does go well, and be good enough against the run that makes you feel okay about him as a player. So again, I like Donovan Ezaraku. First round, especially early first round, might be a little rich, but late first, early second, I feel really good about him there. Moving over to number 4, I have Nick Scorton. I believe that's how you say his name. It might be Scourton. I apologize if I mispronounced it. He's only 20 years of age, so we're talking about another player that has a very high ceiling. Unlike Donovan Ezaraku, I think there is a great chance for him to be very versatile. He has the size to play in a 4-3, but he also can be more in a 2-point stance to play a bit more in the 3-4, maybe even occasionally moving inside to play more of an edge rusher within a 3-4. Wherever you want to use Nick Scourton, because of his size, because of his long arms, because of stuff like that, I do see somebody who has great versatility. For his pros, I said he has elite size, he's a great disruptor, and I think his instincts are really sharp. When he went to Texas A&M, all of his productivity kind of went down the drain. It just felt like Texas A&M, all of their defensive linemen just could not get that productivity, which was just bizarre because all three of them, Shemar Turner, Shemar Stewart, and Nick Scorton, are going to be probably day 2 or day 1 picks. So it's kind of bizarre that the A&M defensive line never felt terribly dominant. With that said, Nick Scorton is somebody who I think has a very solid ceiling, but a very high floor. I don't think he'll ever be a dominant pass rusher, one, but if you put him again second to a really good edge rusher, I can see Nick Scorton being a really productive player. I just don't see too many flaws to his game that I'm like truly concerned about. I think he has some kinks he needs to work on, but again, a good defensive line coach will fix his game. I much preferred his Purdue tape over his Texas A&M tape. So in his first year, like when he was with Purdue, he looks like an incredible player. And then with A&M, things kind of took a bit of a step back, but he still showed flashes of who he could become. So I think at the NFL level, if you can get the best out of him, I see him being a really, really good number 2 edge rusher for a team with maybe a slight chance of becoming that go-to pass rusher for a team. I say a slight chance because I don't think it'll happen, but if you say he's going to be a dominant number 2, I have no issue with that. I have a mid to late first round grade on Nick Scourton. We're going to move on to number 3, and probably the biggest surprise for myself as to where I have him, but I have Braden Swinson from LSU. Now, I've been high on Braden Swinson this entire time, but admittedly speaking, he's kind of been all over my board throughout this process, where he was in the mid 5 to 6 of the top 10 to now all the way up to number 3, because the more and more I think about Braden Swinson, the more and more I kind of fall in love with his game. Swinson is somebody who I like to call just a straight up disruptor. Like, he is constantly getting in the backfield and making plays. He's not somebody who's overly dependent on his athleticism or his size or his length. He uses everything to his advantage, which some of these players in this top 10 don't quite do, especially like a James Pierce Jr. or sometimes even a Donovan Ezaraku. Like Braden Swinson, he uses everything in his skill set. You know, every tool that he has, he uses it, right? He uses his length to, you know, use power. He uses his strength, I guess, also to use power, but he could also use some athleticism as well to get around the corner. I just think Braden Swinson has every tool that you'll want. And I think he has a very high floor and a good size ceiling too, right? He's just this player who I think is a little bit underrated in this draft just because I see him being somebody who can do a lot more than what some of these other players down the list can do. For his pros, I said he's a classic disruptor. He's got good size. And I see his high upside to be a very well-rounded player against both the run and in the pass game. So obviously, if you're telling me that I think he could be great on both sides, then I'm looking at somebody who has the potential to be a really, really good second option, but also somebody who can be a go-to guy within your edge rushing room. I think he might need a bit more time to develop because he's still a relatively younger guy who only started for 1 year for LSU. So I'd like to see maybe a year or two for him to develop. But I think if he develops nicely alongside some good defensive tackles, I think Braden Swinson has a great chance to be a dominant player in the NFL. We're going to move over to number 2, Mike Green. Obviously, I think we all kind of know who Mike Green is, a pass rush demon, good speed, a little bit lighter, but what he makes up for with being a lighter frame, he's still a very strong player who really knows how to get around the corner, and he just understands the nuance of a pass rush a lot more. I have a early first round grade on Mike Green, somewhere within the teens, like 15 to 10, somewhere along those lines. I do think that he will be okay against the run. I think he's much more of a true pass rusher, more so than a complete player. I think you're spending, however, a top 15 pick because of his pass rushing ability. You're not necessarily going to draft an elite run defender into the top 10 pick if he can't be a pass rusher, but you will draft an elite pass rusher if you think he can just be okay against the run. Hopefully that makes sense. I think Mike Green is somebody who is a pass rushing ace. I think he'll come in instantly, and I think he'll have to adjust his game. Obviously, Marshall didn't go up against the greatest of competition, and obviously the NFL is the best of the competition, but whatever competition he went up against, he had productivity. He looked great in the Senior Bowls. He looked fantastic. So I just think Mike Green has a very high ceiling, but also a pretty safe floor where I feel like at the worst, he's going to be a solid pass rusher, but at his best, a guy who can get you 10 plus sacks a season and be hopefully a 3-down guy if everything does go well. Let's move on to number 1. We all know who it is. It's Abdul Carter. I won't spend too much time on this one, but we all know who Abdul Carter is. Freak athlete, a very legit bend, good productivity, a classic disruptor, solid against the run, a great pass rusher, very high upside with a really solid floor. I think that's kind of what needs to be said about Abdul Carter. I don't think he's the best against the run, but I do see a way for him to get the job done, which is all that matters to me, especially when he is that good of a pass rusher. So yeah, it's Abdul Carter number 1. I think he's the second best player in this year's draft just behind Travis Hunter. But you guys let me know in the comment section below who is in your top 10. And if you enjoyed, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button. Love you guys. Peace.